So yesterday we went through the 5 main conditions that are Nageya for Chazara, that will allow a person to take something off a fire, obviously that's covered, and return it and replace it back onto the fire. We gave the 5 conditions. Before we get back to those 5 conditions and what happens if a person by mistake misses out on one of those conditions, one interesting question that the Olim raised is like this. We said that one of the conditions was that it has to be still hot. Has to still be hot. And the reason we said that is really because of Hilchos Bishul, not because of Hilchos Chazara. For Hilchos Chazara, we've got the other conditions of Oida B'Yod and Daita Lachsa, but in the case of heat, really that's a Bishul Shaila, right? Yeah? Okay. So they asked the Kasha, what happens if it's a solid? If it's a Dover Gush, for example, you take a piece of your Shalmi Kegel, it's on the hot plate, I take it off to serve the Oilam, it's Oida B'Yod, Daita Lachsa, there's a blech, it's fully cooked, but L'maisa it goes cold. What is the din with an item that is dover yavish, it's a dover gush, and therefore ein b'shalach habishul, that goes cold, or at least quite lukewarm, that it's no longer hot, that you would serve it according to Ashkenazim, Sfarim, on the Yad. At this point, what din does that have? Does it still have to be hot if it is a dover gush, or no? Since it's a dover gush, it's a dover yavish, it's no longer subject to bishul, and therefore doesn't require it to be hot before returning it. Is everybody with me in the question? Daniel, what do you tie now? Shouldn't have to be hot, right? Because be'etzim is no bishul. Because by bishul you have to put it on. Comes along the Bach, the Mogan Avram brings it la'alocha l'maisa, and the Bach says that it has to be hot. The Lashon of the Bach, I read to you, the Mogan Avram again, you look up the Mogan Avram, Rishon and Gimel Sikot and Lam Vav. But the Bach says, Da'havale kemaniach lekira lechatchila. The Bach learns, which again, the Mogan Avram, Halacha L'maisa paskins like this Bach, and Reb Moshe Nigros Moshe and Chelik, in Erechaim Chelik Dalet 7 Dalet paskins like this Mogan Avram b'Shem the Bach, held that when a dover yavish becomes so cold, it's lost its original heat and original bishul. It's true you won't be over on bishul when you heat it up, but legabe putting it back on, and remember over here you're putting it directly on the hot plate. That's maniach lechatchila, which would be asa like taking it from the fridge and putting it straight on the stove, which you're not allowed to do. You with me? It's a modig chiddush from the Bach, and people don't know this. People make a cheshbon. What's the problem? It's oida b'yadoi, daitoi lachsa. There's a blech. It's mavusha gold sorke. No, so it's not hot. Mabaya. It doesn't need to be hot. It's a dover gush, Davy. It's not true. You take the kegel off to serve for the kiddush. Oida b'yadoi, daitoi lachsa. All the kavunas, all the conditions are there. Oh, but the one thing you're missing, and that is what? It's cold. Mabaya. It's allowed to be cold. It's kegel. It's not a problem. People don't know that it's a mistake. I'm not saying everybody holds this way, but a Maisa, Kla, Mogan Avram, Shulchan Aruch Harav, and the Heilige Balatanya, passes this way, Moshe passes this way.
It's very unusual.
I could be. That could be. Love that. You shout me Kegel. For example, you're serving it. Time you get to the end, you don't have to go for cold Gamri. It doesn't have to be cold Gamri. It can be cold enough that Sfadim on the Yad maybe. So, again, if it's raised, then you can take it from the fridge and put it back. I don't need to come onto Chazara then. I'm talking about Chazara putting it straight onto the hot plate or onto the blech, which is on a fire, which lechatchil you would not be able to do, but since it's Chazara, you're allowed to put it directly on. Here is one of the common mistakes that people just don't know, that it has to also be hot, even if it's a solid item. You with me, David? Okay. Let's go back a moment now. There are 5 conditions for Chazara to be mutter, to again take it off on Shabbos and put it directly back on. The 5 conditions are daita lachs, to have kavanah to put it back when you took it off. Number 2, oida b'yada is still in your hand. We defined that yesterday. It has to be, there's a blech on wherever you're placing it, which again is whether or not there's a flame there and there's a piece of metal, or for example there's a hot plate with unadjustable settings which you cannot change higher or lower, so then that does not require a blech. That's the condition number 3, and the conditions number 4 and 5, which when I get to bishul are number 1 hot, number 4 hot, and number 5 it has to be that is mavushal kol tzorkei. Now, what is the din if any of the conditions are not met? What happens if you don't have the conditions? What's the din? Am I allowed to do Chazara or not if I'm missing any of the conditions? Now for the Sfarim it's very easy, because you don't even need that many to begin with. You only need 3, you don't even need 5. But for the Ashkenazim that need 5, what's the din in this case? So we'll start with the other way around. The last 3 conditions, if you remember, are number 1, blech, number 2, mavushal kol tzorkei, number 3, hot, especially if it's a liquid l'kulei alma. So then the din is, if any one of the last three that we just mentioned are not there, then you cannot replace it. You cannot do chazara. By the way, a very common shaila people don't chap is when you have a crock pot and you take Friday night the cholent out of the crock pot and you want to put it back into the crock pot and there's no blech there. For example, there's no aluminum foil surrounding it, which we'll talk about maybe more when we talk about hatmana, so that you cannot put it back in, because that would be a chazara without a blech, and that would be also, could be even b'diavad, you can't even eat the shulent in such a case on Shabbos morning if somebody did that last night on a Friday night. So if you're missing one of the three conditions, number one, it's not fully cooked, steht sich avadi over and bishul. Number two, if it's not got a blech, and number three, if it's cold, especially if it's a liquid, then you are not allowed to put it back in that case. The first two conditions were generally more mekel, and the reason for that obviously is because they are subject to a machlokes. The Gemara brings down a shaila about whether or not you need them or not. The Rambam says lemaisa we don't need them much about the Shulchan Aruch is mekel svarim or mekel, but the Ramah brings it lalocha lemaisa. But about the b'diavad, especially b'shas atchak, if a person forgot something and he forgot to have das to put it back, or he let go of it by mistake, then avada he can be mekel and put it back. David, you with me? You got a question? Yes.
Can you put it on the timer?
Again? We spoke about that, I think, a couple of times ago. I had to put something on a hot plate on the timer that's going to go on. We spoke about that. Moving on. If you remember the shayla we mentioned, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of yesterday, was it beginning of yesterday? About that guy that was helping his wife in the Shabbos meal. It was yesterday, right? Yeah. And he bought the shulent instead of the chicken soup in that case. So what would have been the din? Halacha l'maisa, what would you have done, or what would you have pasken if they came knocking on your door and said, Rabbi, what are we allowed to do in that case? Obviously, the halacha in that case would be it's mutter, because even though they had no kavanah to put it back, but Pasha was oide biyada, even if it wasn't oide biyada, and you're missing those two conditions, since it's a shas tzorich, shalom bayis is a shas tzorich, avada, and therefore you would be allowed to put it back in that case. Okay, let's talk about two gavaldige chedushim now, which are two amazing chedushim, which are very important. Condition number one, what is the din? It's like this. What happens if you set up everything before Shabbos, the hot plate is on, everything is hot, everything is fully cooked, everything is gavaldik, everything is modik. In the middle of the Suda, you didn't even know this, the hot plate went off. It broke. The electricity on that particular electric point broke. The hot plate is now cold. You get there, the hot plate is freezing. Now, your chicken soup's still hot, and the chulent is hot, and the chicken meat, whatever it is that is on there, is also hot, but the hot plate is freezing cold. What's the din? If I'm not ready now to eat my chicken soup, I'm not ready to eat my meat right now, we're still in the middle of singing Haligas Mirrors, I'm not ready to eat the Suda right now, but I don't want my chicken soup to go cold on a cold hot plate. Can I take my chicken soup, knock on my neighbor's door, who's got a hot plate with some empty space, and say, excuse me, can I please move it from my hot plate to your hot plate? Obviously it's oide biyadai and daitolachsa, whatever you want to say it, put it straight on the hot plate. This way you can keep it warm for another couple of minutes, hours, whatever you want to keep it warm for, or at least until tomorrow morning if you're having a chulent. Don't you me the kasha? Are you allowed to do that? Question is like this. Do we say that lemaisa it's on a hot plate? So I'm moving it from hot plate to hot plate. So mabaya, I'm allowed to move it, the Ramas is Mefurish, Mishnah Gimel. You're allowed to take it from fire to fire, there's no problem. Or do we say, hold on a second, there's no fire here. It's like a counter. That hot plate is no longer a hot plate. Very nice, it looks like a hot plate, but there is no hot there. And therefore all it is a countertop, and I'm taking it from the countertop, and taking it to my neighbor's hot plate, putting it directly on. That's not Chazara, that's the sin lechatchila. No, it's not, it's freezing cold. Hot plate doesn't take long to go cold. It's freezing cold, I touched it, it's freezing cold, the hot plate. Again? Then it's no shaila. If it's still hot, then it's got a fire. Or at least it's hot enough that it's hotter than that. That could be for sure. But it doesn't take that long to go cold. Let's talk about the case where it's freezing cold, the hot plate. But right now it's not on the fire now. Right now it's not on a fire. Huh?
It was at some point.
That's very cute. But right now, what does that mean? That means if Erev Shabbos I put it on a fire and I put it on the counter, I can on Shabbos put it on the hot plate because it was one time on a fire? No, what's Oilam Taina? David, Duvi, what are you Taina? Good answer. So the mice are like this. Shlomo Zalman and Shmir Shabbos has a moedik chiddush over here. Unbelievable. What is the din? If you're wearing a talis and shachris, right? Shaykh's Hilchos Chazara. Zog the Shmir Shabbos. You have a talis on shachris, and you're davening with a moedik Shabbos with a gavaldige kavona. The talis slips off. Before you know it, it's on the floor. It's completely on the floor. When I pick it up and I put it back on, you make a new bracha? Yes. Wow. No, Daniel's not so sure. No. Who else wears a talis?
If you go to the bathroom in the middle of davening, you come back, you have to say another bracha on your talis?
Good kasha. But there you could say differently. There you could say, we're not learning Hilchas Talis and Hilchas Hasachadas right now, but there you could say, I took it off for a moment in order to put it back on. Here, I didn't take it off. It slipped off, gone. If a mezuzah fell down, you have to make a new bracha when you put it back on? Pisketshuva, you're there, Simmeresh Mavav, no, Paslan Zavadi, you do. What's the din over here? What's the din over here, Lemaisa? What's the din when it comes to a talent? What are you taina? So Shlomo Zalman wants to come along and just be chaylik on the world. And he says, I, the Shulchan Aruch, like Reuven says, Avad you make a bracha, but we don't. We don't. Why don't we? What's the pshat that you don't make a new bracha? Right? You make a talis, it falls down, right? You put it on, you put a new bracha or not. Shlomo Zalman says we don't make a new bracha. Why don't we make a new bracha? Very simple. Because when I put it on in the beginning of Shachris, I had kavona that it should stay mitchid v'asayf. From the beginning of davening to the end of davening. I had no kavona that it should fall off. Memela. When it falls off, and I put it back on, it's just the hemshech of the original putting on. There's no reason why I should make another bracha. That when I put the pot on the hot plate, Moedik to take Hilchas Talis to Hilchas over here, and when I took a pot on the hot plate, and I put it on Manas, I to put it on for when? For the ganze time that I need it for. If the hot plate went off, you can't consider that to be that the fire is ki'ilu gone. Maybe there was a hesach hadas, and maybe it's not on a hot plate anymore. And then when I take it to my neighbor's hot plate, that's called a new Maisa of Nesina Lechatchila. Aaron, are you with me? It's mutter. It's freezing cold hot plate. Take it from your hot plate, move it to the neighbor's hot plate. Listen to this. A stage further. Let's go take the Chiddush to a stage further. And he says like this. What's the din? If you come back Friday night after Heilige Davening, Heilige Lechadoidi, you come back into your Heilige Shtib, into the house, you go over to the hot plate just to make sure everything is beseda, and you realize, oy vavoy, I forgot to plug it in. I forgot. Everything was prepared. Everything was there. Everything's musuda. It's gavaldig. I forgot to put the plug in. Forgot to put the plug in. Whatever. I forgot to put the plug in. That hot plate was never a hot plate on Shabbos. So Daniel came along before and he said, Lemais, it was on a hot plate. But here it wasn't on a hot plate, right? It was never on a hot plate. It was always on the counter. What would be the din in such a case? You could take it for avada. It has to be that it's mavusha called tzoykei. Has to be that the chicken soup is avada hot. You had to let it, but according to Sfadim, Ashkenazim has to be nice and warm. And it has to be that there's a blech on the next one. It has to be whatever. Or b'lemaisi, you take it, so chiddush noy with this one, and you put it onto your neighbor's hot plate. It's mutter. Okay, what I say? Massive chiddush, that one. Massive chiddush. Okay, let's move on. Next shaila. Also, one of these things that just push it. These are things that people just, what can I tell you? Ovens. What's the din when it comes to an oven? Chazara to an oven. What is the din in this case? I'm going to tell you Olam a moedik chiddush right now. What's the din of taking something out of an oven and putting it back in? No, are you allowed? I take the chicken out of the oven in order to get, to serve it, and then as I'm holding it, maybe I had kavanah to put it back, I didn't have kavanah to put it back, whatever it is, I realized, it's too early, I can't do this right now. Can I put it back in the oven? Oh, beautiful, says Ben, there's no blech. So there's no blech unless you have one of these boxes, metal boxes that Moshe talks about. But if you don't have that, which I'm assuming most of us don't, therefore you cannot take something and put it into, therefore there's no chazara in an oven. Meaning, whenever you take something out of an oven, it's all over. There's no chazara, right? The reason for this is right now, I'm not going to go through the whole sugya right now, but the reason for this is also for another reason. And that is like this. There's a Gemara in Shabbos Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Lo shonu ela al gabo, avol soicha is osa. The Gemara tells us, and we pass on this, Moedik Aruch Shulchan Shevet Alevi on this. I don't want to be myrich too much on this, but one nakuda. The Gemara says that chazara is mutter on top. Chazara is never mutter in. Why? Because in Zuk the Rashba is more of a machzikim of ashal than on. When you put something in a fire, in a flame, in a matzah where it's surrounded by heat, Zuk the Rashba, Peter Gemara over there in Shabbos, that's more of a machzikim of ashal than anything else. Mimela, inside an oven will be much worse than on top of a hot plate. Therefore, chazara in an oven is osa. You can never do chazara in an oven, even if it's fully cooked, daito lachsa, oito biyadoi, mavusha kol tzokei, hot. It doesn't make a difference. Like Ben said very nicely, it's got no blech. And therefore you can't put it back inside the oven. We're based on the following shaila. Listen to this. Very negay shaila. I've had the shaila many, many times. And the Be'ez Hashem, b'siyat tishma, will be negay to all of you. The kids are young. You want to give them something to eat before they go to sleep. The meal is taking time. I want to put the kids to bed. So I want to take out a couple of pieces of chicken from the oven, in order to give the kids some pieces of chicken. But the mice, I have a problem. If I take it out, I'm not going to be able to put it back in. Now I'm going to be stuck. What do I do, halacha l'maisa? So here's the shaila, Rabbi say. What if I slide it out just a little bit, rip out a couple of pieces, and push it back in? What din does that have? Let me tell you, Rabbi say, maisa shahoya. There was a certain koilo that was learning in Gavaldige Mokken Torah, and they came up to me from the kitchen on Sunday morning, and with the following maisa that happened. They couldn't believe this happened, but it happened. They said that this was the people in the kitchen, in charge of the kitchen, came up to me, and they said that one of the rabbis was there in Shabbos by Kiddush, and the shulchan was on the fire, and there was no blech, and he wanted to make a blech. For whatever reason, he wanted to do Chazara later on, whatever it is. But how's he going to make a blech? He can't make a blech on Shabbos if the pot's on the fire. So what he did is he picked up the fire, he had people there doing it for him, whatever it was, but he was a kilo in charge. He picked up the pot, just a little bit to be able to slide the blech underneath it and put the butt back on. Now they went mishiga, but they couldn't do anything because he was the rabbi with a big long beard, and therefore whoa, we're not going to start with him. But they came up to me on Sunday was this mutter? What did he do? So I was thinking, I didn't see this anywhere mufurish, and I went through a little bit more of the sugya, and then I discussed it at length with Hagoin Rav Falk Zatzal and Rabbi Orbach Shliter as well, and they both are masking to me in the following way. What does Chazara mean? Chazara means to take it off the fire. Mimela, when you take it off the fire and you want to put it back on the fire, there needs to be a blech, there needs to be mavashal called soka, there needs to be everything there. But let's say you never took it off the fire. Let's say it never left the mokrin that it could cook things at that stage. Then mimela, it never left the fire, it never left the eish. If it never left the fire, then I have no problem putting it back even without an eish, without a blech. Which means be'etzem, in the yeshiva over there, they could have picked up the pot slightly, taken some food from it maybe, and put it back without a blech. Why? How can you put something back without a blech? The answer is Chazara, don't even took it off. He never took it off. Lefiza, I wanted a tainer of Falk Lamaisa was masking to me, that if you have Megis, that's the shayla. What does it mean? What's the gather of the kol by Megis? Is it ala eish? Is it not ala eish? And achanami kapit the chazan ish. Maybe you could use it, not use it, because there's no blech anyway. So again, that's a shayla in the kol by legabe Megis. I'm not saying they did that. They didn't take any food out. But I'm saying be'etzem, that's not called ala eish. If it can still cook, maybe it is ala eish. But klape hilchas chazara, you could say that it's still ala eish. Mimela, I wanted a time like this. If you have an oven, Rabbi Salach al I'm telling everyone they could do this. You open up the oven door. It's a chiddush. People will think you are crazy if you do this. But I don't care. It's fine. Gotta do what's right in life, right? You open up the oven door for shtetzach when the element is on, the light is on, and therefore nothing will happen with the thermostat and the heat. You slide out the chicken only enough that if you would leave it there, it would remain yad soledes boy. You take a piece of chicken out and you slide it back in. There's no blech. You're not allowed to do that. Chazara in an oven. Teretz Chazara is only when he took it off. He never took it off. And therefore you could be mekel, and you could do that on Shabbos Kodesh. Be'ez Hashem Rabbi Sai, Sunday, the Siyata Deshmaya will be weiter in the Sugya. Have a wonderful and moedige Shabbos.